Every zombie movie, show, and game agrees on one thing: get bitten, turn fast. But real pathogens don't work like that, not even close. Today I'm breaking down everything science gets wrong about zombie viruses and why the real biology is somehow worse than fiction. Starting with the one myth every franchise refuses to let go of: the instant transformation. You know the scene. Someone gets bitten, they sweat for about 45 seconds, their eyes go milky, and suddenly they're trying to eat their best friend. It happens in every zombie property ever made, and it is, from a biological standpoint, complete nonsense. Here's the thing: the fastest neuroinvasive pathogen we've ever documented in humans is rabies, and even calling it fast is generous. The virus travels along peripheral nerves at roughly 12 to 100 millimeters per day. From a bite on your hand to your brain, you're looking at weeks to months. That's the closest nature has ever come to a zombie virus, and it's still thousands of times slower than what the movies show. But it gets worse. Your immune system doesn't just sit there waiting. Within hours of any viral entry, your body is already producing interferons and mobilizing neutrophils before most viruses even finish their first replication cycle. RNA viruses need 6 to 8 hours just for one cycle, and reaching a viral load high enough for systemic symptoms requires many rounds over days. The math alone makes a 30-second transformation physically impossible. And here's the kicker: even engineered weaponized agents like aerosolized anthrax still have incubation periods measured in hours to days. That's humanity's best effort at making something terrible. Meanwhile, prion diseases take years to decades to produce behavioral changes. Brain-altering pathogens trend slow, not fast, which is, not ideal for screenwriters. But if the speed is fake, that raises an uncomfortable question about what else zombie science is lying about, starting with the idea that one bite guarantees infection, the 100% transmission rate. Every zombie movie operates on the same assumption: one bite, you're done. No exceptions, no survivors, no lucky breaks. The entire apocalypse depends on this being true. It's the domino theory of horror. Here's the thing: no pathogen in human history has ever achieved 100% transmission. Not one, not ever. Measles is the most contagious disease we've ever documented, with an R0 of 12 to 18, and it still fails to infect roughly 3% of exposed unvaccinated people. The most contagious thing we've got, and it can't even close the deal on everyone. But here's where it gets really fun. The virus that zombie fiction is most obviously based on is rabies. Aggressive behavior, biting as transmission, neurological destruction. It's literally the zombie playbook, and rabies is absolutely devastating once symptoms appear, with a fatality rate that's effectively 100%, but its actual bite-to-infection transmission rate around 15 to 50%, depending on wound location. The closest thing nature has to a zombie virus fails to infect the majority of people it bites. I don't know what to tell you. And even if a pathogen were absurdly efficient, it would still slam into human genetic diversity. Roughly 1 to 15% of populations carry resistance alleles that grant natural immunity to specific pathogens. Some people are literally built to say no. A true 100% transmission rate would require eliminating human genetic variation entirely, which is the one thing that's kept our species alive through every plague we've ever faced. So the zombie apocalypse doesn't just need a scary virus. It needs one that outperforms every pathogen in recorded history while defeating millions of years of evolutionary insurance, which is, not ideal for the undead, but at least transmission rates are just numbers on a page. The next problem is purely mechanical, and it breaks zombies even faster: the infinite energy problem. Here's something zombie fiction never wants you to think about. Where is the energy coming from? Because the math on this is brutal, and it kills the entire genre in about 15 minutes. A 70-kilogram human at rest burns roughly 1,700 calories per day just keeping the lights on. Now, take that same body, reanimate it, and have it sprinting after survivors while clawing through doors. You're looking at 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day minimum. That's the caloric demand of a serious endurance athlete, except the zombie doesn't have a functioning digestive system. But let's be generous. Let's say the zombie runs purely on whatever fuel is already stored in the body at death. Muscle glycogen gives you about 1,500 calories. Liver glycogen adds another 400. Those reserves deplete within 12 to 24 hours after death, even if the body is lying completely still. Zero movement, just enzymes doing their thing. And phosphocreatine, the molecule your muscles use for explosive bursts, and that provides energy for about 8 to 12 seconds of maximum effort. One lunge, one grab, budget gone. Now here's the kicker. Without functioning lungs and a circulatory system, any movement relies on anaerobic metabolism, which produces ATP at about 5% the efficiency of normal respiration. That's like trying to fuel a truck with a squirt gun. And burning fat reserves? That requires a functional liver performing ketogenesis. Necrotic tissue cannot do this. Decomposing cells don't synthesize new ATP. They don't synthesize anything. That's literally exactly what decomposing means. So, run the numbers. A reanimated corpse sprinting at full speed burns through every available energy molecule within a few hours at best, then it stops. Not because a survivor outsmarted it, because thermodynamics said no, a few hours. That's your real zombie timer. Not survive until dawn, survive until brunch. But at least energy is a clean, simple problem. The next issue is way messier, because even if you could somehow power a zombie, the thing driving it has already liquefied. The functional nervous system paradox. This is where the entire zombie concept falls apart. Not at the edges, at the foundation. Your brain is 2% of your body weight, but consumes 20% of your oxygen supply. Every neuron runs on ATP, constantly, burning through it to power sodium-potassium pumps that let nerve signals fire. Cut the oxygen for 3 minutes, and neurons start dying. 5 minutes? Irreversible damage, not reduced function. Gone. But let's say the virus somehow keeps neurons alive. Here's the next problem. Myelin sheaths, the fatty insulation wrapped around your nerve fibers, begin degrading after death as autolysis sets in. These sheaths allow nerve signals to travel at up to 120 meters per second. Without them, conduction velocity collapses. Your zombie can't send a signal from its brain to its legs faster than you could mail a letter across the country, and it gets worse. Neurotransmitter synthesis requires precursor molecules like tyrosine and tryptophan, plus functioning mitochondria to power the conversion. Dead tissue has none of these. Zero dopamine, zero serotonin, zero acetylcholine. Your zombie's brain is basically a computer with no electricity, no cables, and no software, trying to run a complex hunting algorithm. Then there's cerebrospinal fluid, which requires active secretion from the choroid plexus to circulate properly. Without it, the brain loses its cushioning and chemical stability. Cool, add that to the list. But the real clincher is rigor mortis. Without ATP, actin and myosin proteins lock into permanent cross bridges. Your muscles become rigid, not stiff, locked, like concrete poured into every joint. This peaks roughly 12 to 24 hours post-mortem. Yet somehow zombies are out here lunging at survivors and climbing fences. Writers love to handwave this, with the virus reanimates infected neurons. But pathogens don't build neural machinery from scratch. They hijack existing systems. And dead systems aren't systems anymore. They're debris. If you think a broken nervous system is bad, wait until you see what happens to the body that's supposed to house it, the decay-defying corpse. This is the part where it gets gross. And I mean genuinely, forensically gross. Because the single biggest problem with the zombie apocalypse isn't survivors running out of ammo. It's zombies running out of body. Here's what happens the moment you die. Within minutes to hours, your own cells start digesting themselves. This process is called autolysis, and it's exactly as fun as it sounds. Your enzymes, the ones that were keeping you alive 5 minutes ago, turn on your tissue like it owes them money. This is happening before a zombie even gets up off the ground. But that's just the appetizer. After 24 to 72 hours, anaerobic bacteria like Clostridium perfringens kick into high gear. These organisms produce gas, bloating, and tissue liquefaction. Within weeks, a body can lose significant portions of its soft tissue mass. Not from external damage, from the inside out. The body is essentially fermenting itself like a bag of forgotten yogurt in the back of your fridge. Except the yogurt used to be a person. Now here's the part that kills the entire zombie concept. Muscle tissue progressively loses tensile strength after death as proteins degrade. Within the first week, decomposition has already done catastrophic damage to muscle integrity. You can't shamble with half-liquefied legs. You can't bite through a skull with a jaw made of pudding. Meanwhile, collagen breaks down as bacterial enzymes tear through connective tissue. Cartilage softens within weeks. And rigor mortis? That peaks around 12 to 24 hours and then resolves over the following 1 to 3 days. After that, zero structural rigidity. None. The zombie is a skin bag full of soup. Walking Dead fans love debating zombie freshness, but nobody ever pulls out a taphonomy textbook. The real zombie apocalypse clock isn't how long until the survivors starve. It's a matter of weeks before every zombie on Earth dissolves into a puddle of its former self. But if self-digestion sounds bad, wait until you hear what science says about zombies trying to find you in the first place. The heightened aggression evolution. Every zombie movie wants you to believe a virus can turn people into screaming, sprinting killing machines. The 28 Days Later model. Pure rage. Zero hesitation, maximum violence. It sounds plausible because we have real pathogens that mess with behavior. But aggression isn't a switch you flip. It's a checklist, and dead bodies fail every single item on it. To produce aggression, you need a functional amygdala processing threat signals. You need dopamine synthesis, through which requires the amino acid tyrosine and intact mitochondria to power the whole operation. You need your hypothalamus releasing CRH, triggering the pituitary to release ACTH. You need responsive adrenal glands pumping out cortisol and adrenaline, and you need a prefrontal cortex that's been selectively inhibited so the brakes come off. A corpse has none of this, zero. But what about rabies? Sure, rabies does increase aggression through limbic system inflammation, particularly targeting the hippocampus. It produces hydrophobia and irritability once the symptomatic phase kicks in, but that's neural damage, not some evolved behavioral program. And the patient is very much alive when it happens. People also love bringing up Toxoplasma gondii, the parasite that makes rodents less afraid of cats. Fine, that's real behavioral manipulation. But Toxoplasma requires intact neural signaling, takes weeks to produce any effect, and primarily reduces fear rather than creating aggression. No mouse is out there organizing coordinated attacks on the family dog. But here's where the real problem lives. A pathogen that makes its host aggressive is actively sabotaging itself. Your host is now screaming, sprinting at people, getting shot, getting killed. Dead hosts don't transmit disease. Natural selection doesn't reward rage. It rewards stealth. A quiet, asymptomatic carrier wandering through a crowded airport spreads disease infinitely more effectively than a shrieking berserker who gets taken out in 30 seconds. The rage zombie isn't just biologically impossible, it's an evolutionary dead end, which is, not ideal for a pathogen trying to survive, but at least aggression only requires a broken brain. The next problem requires zombies to do something even more impossible: pick their targets. The blood-brain barrier myth. Every zombie movie treats the brain like it's an open door. Bite happens, virus gets in, brain goes haywire. But the human brain has a bouncer, and it's arguably the most effective security system in your entire body. The blood-brain barrier is a wall of tightly packed endothelial cells held together by specialized proteins like Claudin-5, occludin, and ZO1. Together, they actively exclude over 98% of small molecule drugs from ever touching brain tissue. The only things that get through passively are lipophilic molecules under 400 Daltons. Most viruses are 20 to 300 nanometers in diameter. They're far too large to slip between those tight junctions. It's like trying to shove a watermelon through a mail slot. The few neurotropic viruses that actually reach the brain don't brute force their way in. They cheat. Rabies hijacks nicotinic acetylcholine receptors at neuromuscular junctions and then crawls backward up the axons like it's sneaking through the ventilation ducts. Herpes uses the Trojan horse method, establishing latency in sensory ganglia and reactivating along nerve pathways. These are extremely specialized tricks that took millions of years of evolution to develop. And here's the thing that should end the zombie conversation entirely. Measles is one of the most contagious viruses on the planet. It spreads through the air like it owns the place, but it causes acute brain infection in roughly 1 in 1,000 cases. That's how good the blood-brain barrier is. One of the most transmissible human pathogens almost never gets past it. Even rabies, literally the most neurotropic virus known to science, typically needs anywhere from a few weeks to several months after a bite to reach the brain. For the virus that is specifically built to get there, it doesn't instantly reprogram anything, it crawls. So when zombie fiction tells you a pathogen can reach the brain in minutes and start rewriting behavior on the spot, what they're actually describing is a virus that somehow solved the hardest problem in all of neurovirology before lunch, which is, not ideal for scientific credibility. But at least the brain has walls. The next myth doesn't even have that excuse: the selective prey targeting. Every zombie movie relies on one core assumption: the infected can find you. They track living humans through walls, across cities, through darkness. It's their whole thing, and it's completely impossible. Here's why. Human chemoreception, your ability to smell and taste, depends on roughly 5 to 6 million olfactory receptors and about 10,000 taste buds. All of those require intact cranial nerves and a functional olfactory bulb to process anything. These systems decompose fast. We're talking days, not weeks. A zombie's nose is decorative at best, but here's where it gets genuinely funny. Decomposition produces volatile organic compounds like cadaverine, putrescine, and dimethyl disulfide. These chemicals specifically repel living organisms. That's their entire biological purpose. So a zombie wouldn't just fail to smell you. It would actively drive you away. The thing supposedly hunting you is a walking repellent, which is, not ideal for a predator. Now, people always bring up Toxoplasma gondii as proof that parasites can create hunters. See, nature already does this. Turns out, no. Toxoplasma doesn't increase prey hunting behavior at all. It reduces the host's aversion to cat odor specifically, making infected mice less likely to avoid areas marked by cat urine. That's it. Making a mouse slightly less scared of a cat's smell is a far cry from programming a corpse to identify, track, and attack a specific species across a shopping mall. Rabies get cited too, but rabid animals attack indiscriminately. They don't select targets. They don't prefer humans over fence posts. They just bite whatever's closest. And that's the real problem. problem. Predatory behavior requires visual cortex processing, superior colliculus coordination, and prefrontal motor planning. A decaying brain has zero capacity for any of it. Without functional visual and olfactory processing, a zombie literally cannot distinguish a human from a lamppost. You could stand perfectly still and it would have no biological mechanism to know you exist. But if you think a zombie's senses are broken, wait until you hear how the virus supposedly survives inside them forever, because that math doesn't work either. The eternal incubation. Zombie fiction loves the slow burn carrier. The person who got bitten 3 weeks ago seems totally fine, and then one day just drops dead and reanimates at the worst possible moment. It's great drama. It's also biologically impossible. And the reason why is almost elegant in how simple it is. Viral latency is real. Herpes viruses do it all the time. They tuck themselves into your neurons and other host cells, go completely silent, and wait, sometimes for decades. But here's the thing. Nobody in zombie fiction seems to understand. Latency is a relationship. The virus isn't just hiding in a cell. It's actively depending on that cell to stay alive. The host cell has to maintain its metabolism, keep synthesizing proteins, and run anti-apoptotic signaling so it doesn't self-destruct. Herpes viruses literally produce their own proteins that inhibit apoptosis pathways, keeping the cell alive so the virus can keep sleeping inside it. The moment that cell dies, the relationship is over. In necrotic tissue, there's no cellular machinery left to sustain anything. Your own nucleuses, enzymes that chop up DNA, start degrading viral genomes within hours to days after death. A corpse doesn't preserve its viral payload, it destroys it. The zombie's own decomposition is the antivirus software. But what about bacterial spores? Sure, Bacillus and Clostridium can form dormant endospores that survive for years. But germination requires very specific environmental triggers, nutrient availability, water, and intact germination machinery. Not some random electrical impulse that magically wakes everything up at once. And prions? Prion diseases like Kuru or CJD can incubate for years to decades, which sounds perfect for zombie fiction. Except prions work through protein misfolding, not replication. They cause progressive neurodegeneration in living hosts, not behavioral control, and they absolutely cannot reanimate dead ones. So here's the paradox that breaks the entire carrier trope. The virus needs you alive to hide. It needs your cells running, your metabolism humming, your immune system cooperating. But the second you die or become undead, every single persistence mechanism collapses. Your body eats the virus before the virus can eat anything else, which is, not ideal for an eternal pandemic. But if the zombie virus can't even survive inside its own host, wait until you hear what happens when it tries to jump to a completely different species. The universal species jump. Everything else on this list is difficult. This one is flat out impossible. Zombie movies love the idea of a single pathogen that tears through every living thing on Earth. Humans, dogs, rats, birds, deer. One virus. Total extinction across the board. And it sounds terrifying until you realize it would require overturning roughly 3.5 billion years of host pathogen coevolution, which is, a lot of years. Here's why. For a virus to jump from one species to another, it needs 3 things to line up simultaneously. First, matching cellular receptors. The virus has to physically dock with the right protein on the cell surface, like a key fitting a lock. Second, compatible intracellular replication machinery, meaning the host cell's ribosomes actually cooperate with the viral genome. Third, compatible immune evasion, because every species has unique interferon responses and MHC recognition systems the virus needs to dodge. Receptor specificity alone blocks the vast majority of animal viruses from infecting humans. Avian influenza needs mutations in hemagglutinin to shift its binding preference from avian type to human type sialic acid receptors. That's a handful of mutation events, and it still takes years of circulation in animal populations to achieve. SARS-CoV-2 needed ACE2 receptor compatibility, plus a furin cleavage site, plus receptor binding domain mutations, all evolving over years in animal reservoirs before it ever touched a human cell. But the best example is HIV. Simian immunodeficiency virus jumped from primates to humans, a grand total of around 4 times over decades. 4 separate spillover events for one species barrier. Each one was astronomically rare. Now imagine a zombie virus that replicates identically in human neurons, mouse neurons, and bird cells. That would require universal receptor presence across species that diverged hundreds of millions of years ago. A truly universal cross-species pathogen would need thousands of parallel mutations happening simultaneously. That's not unlikely. That's not even theoretically possible under current molecular biology. The real terror of pathogens was never that they infect everything. It's the opposite. They're exquisitely, terrifyingly specialized. They spend millions of years perfecting the art of destroying one specific type of host. That's what makes them dangerous, not universality. Precision. If you enjoyed this video and want to see everything zombie movies haven't considered about survival, click the video on the screen now.